Good morning and welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Natalie Brandt. Well, one of the biggest races in the South Sound is the battle for Tacoma mayor. Vying for that city's top job, architect and former mayoral candidate Jim Merritt and former council member Victoria Woodard. They are joining us both this morning. Thank you so much for being here. I am also have the honor of being joined by Tacoma Bureau Chief Jenna Hanchard.
Good morning.
Jenna, you've been covering this race, talking to a lot of voters. What are the top issues on their minds?
The two top issues that I hear about are affordability and homelessness. Can we afford to remain in Tacoma? But the big question that I want to start out with is about homelessness. The city declared an emergency homeless declaration and also decided to extend it throughout the rest of the year. That means whoever takes the seat next year is going to be at the helm of figuring out what to do next with this crisis. Millions of dollars to figure out how to address homelessness. How would each of you address homelessness, address this crisis in the city of Tacoma if you're sitting in that seat?
Well, I think, one of the things that's really important when we talk about homelessness, which is a crisis not just in Tacoma, but it's a crisis in this region, right? And so I think one of the things that's really important for us to remember is that homelessness is not just about putting a roof over someone's head, even though that's a part of stabilizing someone, but we've really got to focus on really breaking the cycle of homelessness. That's what I want to do as mayor. I want to make sure that in addition to getting someone stable in a home, that we're addressing all the other issues that come with homelessness, like mental health and drug addiction and job training. Because if we really want to see people get out of this and get back to being a part of the everyday world and being able to contribute and take care of themselves and their families, we've got to be able to make sure we're surrounding them with everything they need.
I believe we need to look at a strategy for giving them a better future. It does include mental health, addiction, but we need to look at training. We do need to look at giving self-esteem and how you relate. And I think we have a lot of agencies in the South Sound that can help with that. I think we need to focus on how we get all of them engaged and have a holistic approach. And my charge is to start connecting those folks so we're not doing things in isolation as a city, independent from a lot of very good agencies.
Mr. Merritt, you've said your top issue is bringing family wage jobs to Tacoma. So what's the first step you would take to accomplish that? And please be specific.
Okay. Well, we need to understand that we can be the economic engine for Southwest Washington and the Olympic Peninsula. We do not need to look north to King County and Seattle. What we need to do is start to nurture that area and the companies that can do business there, then start looking at growing more businesses that the people that are maybe in King County and Seattle, that they could do better and lower operating costs by being in the Tacoma area. And I think that will be a big part of starting the momentum for more jobs in Tacoma and stop the traffic problem that we have of really clogging I-5 coming north in the morning and in the afternoon.
And Ms. Woodard, you've prioritized economic opportunity as well and affordability. So how is your plan different than your opponents?
Well, I think what's really important for us is to realize that Tacoma has incredible assets. We have a downtown core, we have a port, and we've also got neighborhood business districts. So my number one priority really is growing family wage jobs, because I think that by doing that, we address all of the other things like affordability and others. So I think the first thing we've got to do is we've got to make sure everybody who's doing business in Tacoma feels like they're being extremely successful, because if we can create an environment where people are successful, business will grow. But we've also got to address affordability so that people who live and work in our community can afford to live in our community, which means we've got to increase housing in our community, because the more housing stock we have, then the more opportunities we have for them to be cheaper, because there'll be higher demand.
Before we wrap up this segment, I want to ask if you have a follow-up question on this issue.
Yeah, I do. I mean, in addition to affordability, other things that people are concerned, especially in an area like Tacoma where you have so many different unique ethnic and cultural neighborhoods, in bringing growth and economic growth sometimes comes gentrification. How would each of you look to protect neighborhoods to make sure that they don't lose those cultural and ethnic identities that they have right now? And we'll start with you.
Well, to me, I want to start a city municipal bank to help in down payments and in tying mortgages to income. This will help all age groups, particularly the young that are saddled with a lot of debt, or young people are having a hard time even getting established. We can do that in all neighborhoods, and this will be a key factor. The other comment I'd like to make for this is reliability. We hear that we want to reach out, but we've had many years now where there's not people that are really thinking Tacoma is a reliable city. We need to have good decisions that they can count on, and that has not been happening in the last decade. We need to do better. That will start to also help in growing that local job base and helping in getting people into home ownership, which I think is key, and really rentals that are tied to any tax breaks that are permanent.
But with regards to protecting the cultural and ethnic identities of neighborhoods that sometimes feel like they're pushed out when economic growth comes to the city, how would you look to specifically protect that?
Well, we need to specifically look at helping them get into the home ownership so that they can get stable in those neighborhoods. That's a root issue, and I think that will start stabilizing each of the ethnic and different culturally diverse neighborhoods.
And Ms. Woodward's final word on this on-air portion.
Well, I think with, as a little girl who grew up in Tacoma, and I got to live in every portion of Tacoma, that's the great thing that makes Tacoma what it is because we do have those diverse neighborhoods. I think when we talk about affordability, one of the ways that we keep neighborhoods diverse is to make sure that affordability is in every neighborhood. That helps keep the neighborhoods, and it helps them actually continue to be diverse and continue to be the place that it is now.
Thank you very much. That's all we have time for on air, but we are going to continue this great conversation online. So just go to king5.com and you can find much more extended coverage there. For now, I will send it back to you. Remember that Election Day is November 7th. Ballots should be in your mailbox. So, Ms. Woodard, picking up on this conversation of affordability and what can be done to keep affordability across all neighborhoods in Tacoma.
Yeah, so I think, I talked earlier about we've got to make sure that there's affordability in every neighborhood. But I think the other thing that's really important for us to understand is that we've got to be able to develop in neighborhoods. I mean, the diverse neighborhoods can't just be the rundown neighborhoods in Tacoma. We've got to really, the Bay Area did this study called Development Without Displacement. And I think there are some really key elements in there that we can learn from in Tacoma to be able to understand that if we build a new school across the street from you, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move. That we've got to figure out how to make sure that people can stay in those neighborhoods, but we can still develop and invest in those neighborhoods.
And this is an issue that we've seen a lot in Seattle. We've seen City Hall in Seattle struggle with in terms of how do you work with developers and encourage them, incentivize them to continue development while also providing affordability. So what ideas, as a former architect, what ideas do you have on that front?
I spent my career working with public agencies, with communities and developers to invest and to get these projects completed in all sorts of neighborhoods and communities all over the Northwest. What we need to do, first of all, is get our city reliable. If we're going to do projects, and I could name projects across our city that can't get permits. They don't have good answers, and so they're at risk. And there are companies, actually small little businesses that have gone bankrupt because they can't get good answers from our city. That is a key factor, and that has to happen across the board. And that's happened in McKinley, it's happened on 6th Avenue, and that's got to change. That's fundamental in changing the culture of how we really relate to our citizens. And that is kind of the root issue to me. Now, what we can do as far as where these residential projects go, or we have mixed-use centers in Tacoma, but we need to communicate how those are going to develop over time with those residential neighborhoods so they don't feel they're being pushed out. And we do have residential that are apartments in these neighborhoods. That communication needs to be early with the neighborhoods. And I brought that up in neighborhood councils a year ago, that we need to start communicating early in project development. And when we have those projects happen, we need to tie permanent affordable housing to those that are not deleted at some point in the future. That will allow those units to remain in the affordable range. And so we need to be more effective. I also believe that we have a lot of areas that I call commercial that isn't really effective commercial. It could be in residential, and bring more opportunities for residential into a lot of our neighborhood areas.
I think there, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I think as we talk about giving tax incentives, we have to make sure those tax incentives are not just for 8 or 12 years, but they're actually for the full time of the project. I also think we've got to make sure that as we work with people who provide low-income housing, like Tacoma Housing Authority, that we've got to get more people who are developing affordable and low-income housing in Tacoma. And when we talk about mixed-use centers, which is really important about affordability, affordability is not just about how much you actually pay for your rent. When we're talking about building in these mixed-use centers, affordability means how close am I to transit? Affordability means, do I have to get in my car and drive to a grocery store? So if we develop in these mixed-use centers where we're able to put in grocery stores and other amenities so you don't have to get in your car and walk everywhere, or you can walk outside and get on the Link Light Rail, or get on a bus and be able to go somewhere, we're addressing affordability in a whole nother way that I think is helpful to everyone who lives in the city.
You know, there's a big debate in Tacoma about what kind of jobs, what type of industries we need next, really. So this week we were at the announcement of them wanting to hopefully get Amazon in their backyard. And we went out and talked to some folks who said, oh, we don't need Amazon jobs. We need these type of jobs, or we need these type of jobs. What types of jobs, what type of industry do you think would be great for Tacoma? I mean, one of also the big discussions is, you know, you have hundreds of people that leave Tacoma every day to go get a job someplace else. So what types of jobs do you think would keep people in Tacoma?
Well, first of all, it is a tragedy what we have slipping that we're into a better community, really, for King County and Seattle. That has got to return by making it, first, a reliable city to get those answers and those jobs that want to come there. We have a history in the last decade of losing Frank Russell Company and now DeVita moving out. Hundreds and hundreds of living wage jobs that are not going to move. That reduces the tax that is coming in to Tacoma, and that's then spreading the taxes to everyone else. This is a serious problem that I think we're facing. So the kind of jobs, it's a long-range plan and a vision that we do not have. We do planning in what's called these sub-area plans, which you're hearing about right now, with interim regulations. Well, these are done on kind of the end solution, and everybody fights for what that's going to be. That's the wrong end. In my career, it's all about working with groups and being a leader to bring people together on a solution that they're all a part of. So to me, it's not dictating, it's facilitating the group so we figure out where we're going to go. We don't know where we're going as a city. How do we do our industrial base? How do we do our is it a tech center? Are we going to have all these other components?
Right.
We need to have that definition. Then we start moving towards a long-range plan that we can then start inserting and start addressing the goals and objectives for each area and how it fits into the overall plan. We're a long ways from that.
So, and I tend to not to look at Tacoma as all the things that have left Tacoma, but Tacoma is still growing. I mean, we have incredible companies that are growing and expanding in Tacoma. Infoblox is in Tacoma. State Farm has since located in Tacoma. I mean, so we've got good things happening. Is it everything we need? Absolutely not, but we're on the right path, and I think that we've got some good things happening that are going to come out. We've got a new incubator in Tacoma called the RAIN Incubator, and they're working with biotech startup companies. I think Tacoma's greatest asset is that we've been able to grow the Warehousers, and we've been able to grow the Frank Russells. They started out as small businesses in Tacoma. Tacoma's an incubator as a city and has the ability to grow big companies. And so I think we need to use that as an asset and stop thinking of it as a deficit.
I'll ask you both.
Can I ask something of that? Because Weyerhaeuser was brought up there. Well, Weyerhaeuser just moved again from Federal Way. Well, it was because even in the 70s when they moved, they were not getting good answers from the city of Tacoma, so they moved to Federal Way, right? Now, here they are now moving to Seattle. Nobody from Tacoma went and talked to them. And so we do have a history of growing, but they're leaving, and this is what we have to change because we're not getting reliable answers.
So that speaks to my follow-up question, which, do you have a blueprint to both retain jobs and grow new ones?
Yeah. First of all, go and meet with all of the major companies and just have a target list that starts with week one. It says, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, and communicating. There are many other companies that do not get communication or returning calls from our city government or the mayor. That needs to change. So we start working with those companies on how we can respond better and answer their questions instead of leaving them in frustration. That's got to change, and we can do it. The other thing is...
Sorry, the other thing, I cut you off there.
Okay.
The other thing.
Start reaching out to the companies that I believe can have lower operating costs in Tacoma and be more efficient in the economic engine for the South Sound. Those companies that, for instance, in Port Townsend, if you're in Seattle, it takes you all day to really communicate, to get there and back and forth. Tacoma, it's half a day. That's a lot of operating cost reduction. And I would start communicating with them and be a part of the team to how we get them in Tacoma.
Ms. Woodard, I want to ask, as a former council member, Mr. Merritt is saying that the city has not been reliable in communicating or, functioning. So do you agree, disagree?
I disagree. I mean, I think we haven't been perfect. I mean, I think we went through an economic downturn while I was on the council. This is a much different day than it was the 7 years I served on the city council. And that's why I want to be mayor, is to pick up on the work that we've done well, and to move forward. I'm proud to sit here this morning and say I have the sole endorsement of the Tacoma-Pierce County Business Alliance, which means that those are the business people in Tacoma who believe that I'm the candidate who's going to be able to move our city forward. So those relationships that we're talking about that we need to build, I already have. And so we do need to do a better job of communicating. That's why I want to form a Mayor's Business Alliance Council, so that we are meeting and talking all the time before something goes wrong, before something changes, so that we're constantly having conversation about how to move our city forward. In addition to that, I understand as mayor that I'm the face of the city. I'm the one who's out there talking to businesses. But I also want to make sure that we have someone in City Hall who, in addition to me, wakes up every single day and thinks about job retention and job creation, and that we can work side by side together to make sure that businesses are getting everything they need in order to be successful, so that other businesses will come to Tacoma.
So we talked about recruiting business. What about training the workforce? I mean, I covered a story one time about how there were a lot of people that were applying to jobs but realized that they didn't necessarily have the skill set that matched some of the jobs that were out there. So you had these high unemployment rates, but it didn't necessarily mean that there were no jobs. It was because you had a workforce that didn't necessarily have the skill set to match. Absolutely. So you have Bates Technical College, which provides a lot of technical training to people in Tacoma, but what other programs, what other city initiatives do you think can be done to make sure that people have the skill set to participate in these jobs?
Well, we've got some. I mean, we have some already. I just talked about the RAIN Incubator Program. It's actually a partnership with UW-T, where they're matching students who have an interest in that field with biotech companies who want to start up, and they're actually working together. The other thing is we have the Tacoma Training and Employment Program that actually provides pre-apprenticeship training for those who are having the hardest time getting jobs. And when we think about the construction jobs that are going to come through Tacoma, with the infrastructure bond that we passed, with the light rail with Sound Transit and light rail that's coming through Tacoma, we've got residents we've got to get trained to get ready to go to work. And programs like TTEP, which takes people through not just the hard skill training, but the soft skill training, is going to prepare them for that. We also got a grant from the FTA where we're preparing people in the Hilltop to be able to work on the light rail when it comes through Hilltop.
And Jim, what do you think?
Well, I think we do have great Voc Tech schools with Clover Park and Bates.
Right.
And we'd have good union apprenticeship programs. Where I think we're missing, and the disconnect happened a number of years ago, is connecting those to the high school students and even the college students. So there's other pathways than just maybe a college degree. But there's still that important factor. We do have, UW-T is doing a fabulous job with Urban Waters, which is another great for environmental issues that is down the Foss. And I do think I was at the RAIN and I've been to a number of the tech centers that are now starting to develop in town. So I think we need to get this mentoring or getting the understanding of that to the schools and to even other groups, maybe through the neighborhood council. There's a kind of, here's what we've got and where those opportunities are. And I don't think we've been doing a good job of doing that. And we can do better across the line.
I do want to get to a big environmental issue that's been in the headlines, the proposed liquid natural gas plan for the Tacoma, on the Tacoma waterfront. Based on some past articles that I read, Ms. Woodards, you previously supported the project. From what I understand, has your position changed?
It has not. It has not. Tote, which is one of our largest shipping companies in Tacoma, is under federal mandate to get a cleaner burning fuel and get out of that dirty bunker fuel that they're burning now. LNG is the transitional fuel that gets them there. It saves hundreds and hundreds of jobs on our port. And it provides a better outcome for the people who work there. I do believe that citizens in Tacoma, that they deserve to have their questions answered, that they deserve to feel safe. I believe we've got to hold PSC accountable, and we've got to make sure that the regulators who are checking off on this project, that they are adhering to everything they're supposed to adhere to, and that our fire chief at the end of the day, who says whether or not it's safe, a go or a no-go, that he has full authority to be able to do that.
Mr. Merritt, you've said the community should decide?
Well, here's the fundamental issue. LNG was done as a backroom deal first. There was no communication in the community. This is a real fundamental problem. This is indicative of how our city has been doing things over the last decade, more specifically. Okay, PSC, I asked them over and over again, and to just give me scientific facts about the risks and consequences. All they do is PR. They have big ads about just PR. They're not willing to address the concerns that are out there, and even in the scientific community. That's a problem. And why are they allowed to continue construction in what's called going vertical? They had a demolition permit and a foundation permit. I don't deny those things, but they're doing it without a permit. They should be red tagged. They should not be continuing. The other issue is we don't have a master plan and a vision of where this could be. And there's questions about what kind of a future jobs. 18 jobs, 100 jobs, is it precluding the opportunity for 1,800 jobs or 18,000 jobs of where we want to define ourselves as a city? These are big issues that we need to look at as holistically. Now, as far as LNG being this, I don't believe at this point the answers are there, that it is a transitional fuel and all. There's challenges out there and the risks, and even a retired firefighter who was down in the port all of his career is very concerned about some of the information that we're getting. So I think there's questions unanswered. This is not time to take a leap of faith. This is time to make very good decisions and to challenge them. So we need to make this a part of our moving forward, to look at that as a solution or a setting aside to make certain that we do things that are right for Toad. What is the other alternatives? And then move towards a better solution for Tacoma. Backroom deals, though, are not good for business in Tacoma, and that's what we have.
Well, I think we keep saying backroom deals, and I think what we forget, and this is where experience comes in as a council member, we don't vote on every permit. We don't get to vote on what, nobody actually sat in a back room and said, let's put LNG in the port. The reality is that we set the parameters for what happens on the port, and that's why we want to do the sub-area plan, is to be able to look at what new parameters do we want to set on the port. But staff has a set of parameters to look at, as whether or not a business fits those parameters or not. If they meet those regulations and they fit those parameters, then they get cited. It's not an opportunity for us to vote on it. Could you imagine if the city council voted on every single permit that came forward? I mean, that would be a nightmare for us and be a nightmare for our city. So I think what's important for me, the sub-area plan, is where we're going to get at that, where we as a city are going to be able to decide what we want in our port and what's the best way to move forward. I think when you bring together the port, when we bring together the tribe, when we bring together citizens, when we bring together business owners, that's when we're going to have a real opportunity to get the best ideas of how we move forward this industrial port. It is an industrial port, and we need to look at more green manufacturing jobs, but it's an industrial deep water port. We're not going to put a supermall on the port. Those aren't the best family wage jobs. We're going to put good businesses on the port, like solar. And so those are going to be some of the ideas that we can bring to the port. But I'm ready to hear with the citizens, because I think the best thing we have in Tacoma is if we involve everyone in the decision making and let them provide their ideas.
Well, here's the problem that I see. It really is the sub-area plan, and what we're going to be looking at are talking about this use, that use, and those are the end decisions, not the beginning of a planning process. We need to start talking about what the constraints and opportunities and the goals and objectives are for our industrial base and the surrounding areas. This is where we should be starting. What happens when you go to the end uses, it's just a fight. This will not get done in 3, 5, or 5, whatever, 2 to 5 years, because all it is a fight, or it's going to be a win-lose. It doesn't have to be that way. And there are many examples I could cite in how to do this in the appropriate way. The other problem is that you got to look at the industrial base holistically. It's not a sub-area plan just about the port. It's about what happens with Nally Valley, what happens with Frederickson. And when you really start drilling down into the port goals and strategic plan, is where's the next industrial piece going to be? Where is it going to be? That has to be part of this plan, because it has to do with the locations of businesses and jobs, but it also includes the transportation, both in rail and truck traffic, which is getting a challenge all by itself. So all these things have to be part of it. And we can do it, but we're going to jump to a conclusion and say like, don't like, and this is going to just cause more turmoil. That's what feels like deals are made before everybody has a seat at the table. We need to have opportunities. It's not just maybe for stakeholders. They're the steering committee, but everybody needs to get to the table, to have their say, and the industry gets to have their say, of course, because they need to say how it's going to work, and they need to convince. This is how we've done in other things that would have questionable uses.
So in wrapping up this discussion, and I'm going to give you the final question, but one other thing to think about and to answer as you think about your final question, Jenna, management styles, how would they be different between both of you? Because obviously being a manager is a huge part of being mayor.
Well, you know, in Tacoma, we have a city management form of government. So we have somebody who manages the day-to-day operations of the city. So really, we are really the face of the city. We are the outside, you know, we are the public face of the city, and that's who we interact with. And then we lead the council. So I think in terms of style, I'm a collaborative leader. And I'm not just a collaborative leader because I say I am. I'm a collaborative leader because you can look at the support I have, and people believe in me to be able to bring groups together. I've been doing that in Tacoma for over 30 years, and that's what I'm going to continue to do, and that's how I'm going to continue to behave as mayor. I think what's important is that when you're mayor, you represent everyone who lives in the city, every neighborhood who lives in the city, every person who lives in the city. And you've got to be able to understand the needs of everyone. And that's what I know, and that's what I'm going to implement when I'm mayor.
Yeah. My history has been bringing people together. My leadership style is getting to consensus solutions by having folks involved from at all levels, not just the policymakers, but everybody has an opportunity. So I will be available. I'll be out in the community. I think it's rarely that we see council members and mayor at the neighborhood councils. I think that needs to be part of it. I need reaching out to groups and really engaging in things. I'm one that's looking for collaborative solutions at every level, and being one that will be there to support. That's going to be a key factor, and I'm looking forward to that. What we're going to do to symbolically show everybody that we have an open door policy. It's not even going to be a door anymore, because the first week in office, we're going to take the door off the hinges to the mayor's office. This is open and availability. This has to be key to being an open communicator. I've done this for 35 years of working in public and private. I've worked with municipalities all over the Northwest, you know, 20, 30 or more municipalities, and dealing with them and working out solutions. The idea is being a part of that, working with the city manager, with the departments, through the city manager, to work on solutions that really solve things, to get to a culture of, yes, how do we help to get decisions that can be relied on by the citizens and those that want to invest in our city.
I really want to go back to almost a sub-issue that you both sprinkled on earlier, which is addressing mental health. It's an issue that we talk about in Tacoma and Pierce County, but it's also an issue that we talk about nationally, almost a silent issue that we don't really address. We all probably have family members that have been touched by mental illness. What do you think the city's role and responsibility is to helping some of the most vulnerable in the city and in the area, and what plans would you have in order to do that?
Well, first of all, the city does have a 1/10 of 1% to help in that. And that's a real good first step. As mayor, you need to go to the city or the county council and the county executive and say, you need to come on board. You need to be part of this local funding. It's not just Tacoma, it's our South Sound region needs to be working together. And that really has not been happening yet. So that needs to happen. We also need to go to the state and start challenging some of the reductions that they've done over the last few decades in Western State and even Eastern State and over in Spokane, to start helping the situation and start getting a model where you're having more community based for those communities, and not that Tacoma becomes a gravitational for more than their fair share. So fair share is important, but we do have a 120-bed hospital. It's being built by Franciscan St. Joe's and Multicare around the Allamore area, and it's under construction for 120 beds to help in this assessment and and I'm not sure of the next step of that, but we have agencies that we need to start collaborating better so we can get this in a more positive approach to help with mental health, with early awareness, and then moving them to a more positive future.
And Ms. Woodard's final word.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Being an experienced candidate, I can talk directly to that. So I'm proud to say that I was on the council when we passed the 1/10 of 1%, and we got a dedicated revenue stream. When the county wouldn't do the work, we stood up and said, we care enough about our citizens that we're going to do the work. Also, the brand new mental health facility that's being built in Tacoma, the city made an investment, and it was under my leadership that we got to make that investment. The city of Tacoma Washington State ranks 48th out of 50 in having psychiatric beds in their estates. Tacoma and Pierce County rank even lower than that on the national average. So we've got to make this investment. You're right. I have a personal story about somebody who needed to actually get help and couldn't get help. So in addition to the money that we're investing, or while we're investing our money, our 1/10 of 1%, our dedicated revenue stream with local nonprofits to do the work, we've got to make sure that those people who are getting that money are being held accountable to make sure they're providing the services that are going to change the lives of these people who need it the most. This facility is going to be another way to do it, because we've got to stop thinking that our emergency rooms are a place to get mental health care. And so these are the kind of investments we're going to continue to make, but I think we've got to continue to work on our partnerships. It's so exciting in Tacoma. Normally hospitals are in competition with each other, that our two largest hospitals came together and we formed this huge coalition to be able to address mental health. The facility is only one thing that we're doing. Stay tuned, we'll be doing a lot more.
Thank you to everyone here. This was a great discussion, and good luck in the next couple, the final push, 18 days.
Great.
All right.
Good to have you both.
Thank you.